Hi, I'm Aaron Haig, and I want to welcome you back to part 2 of our teaching on the transitional generation. Remember, in part 1, I defined the word transition as movement from one place to another place. I used the example of Jesus instructing his disciples to get into a boat, like you see behind me, to cross over to the other side. Transition is simply movement from one point to another point. The generation that I'm referring to is the first century generation of unbelieving Jews and believing Jews. They were moving out of the old covenant and into the new covenant. I want to pick up with you today in this teaching right at that point, specifically focusing in on the word generation. Jesus uses the word generation several times, 2 times to be specific, in Matthew 23 and Matthew 24. If you have your Bible, open your Bible to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, and look at verse 36. I'm using my online Bible, so I'm scrolling on my phone. So verse 36 records Jesus saying, "Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation." What generation is Jesus referring to? It's the generation that he's speaking to. And all the things that are being referenced are, number one, if you read back in Matthew 23, he pronounces a series of woes upon the religious leaders of Judaism. He says, "You look like whitewashed sepulchres. You're looking good on the outside, but you're dead on the inside. You've got dead men's bones." He talks about them looking like a real clean, pristine cup on the outside, but filled with rottenness on the inside. So then he goes on to say, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I've wanted to gather you like a mother hen gathers her chicks." But then he says, "I'm going to leave your house desolate." Now keep in mind, he's speaking about the temple that was the very center of Judaic life. And he's speaking to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And he's saying, upon your generation, Pharisees and Sadducees, your house is going to be left desolate. It's going to be emptied. I'm going to turn it upside down. Matter of fact, Matthew records Jesus dialoguing with his disciples in Matthew 24. Flip over to that chapter and look at verse 1. Verse 1 reads, "Jesus came out of the temple, the house that he said to the Pharisees he was going to leave desolate. And he comes out of the temple and was going away when his disciples came up to the point of the temple buildings. And he said to them, 'Do you not see all of these things?'" What are all the things he's referencing? The temple. He says to his disciples, "Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down." Now, Jesus is speaking to the generation that the disciples were living in. He's saying something very specific about the temple, the very center of Judaic worship and life. He's saying it's going to be torn down. There's not going to be one stone left upon another when I'm through with it. He's actually referencing a historical moment in history when Jerusalem was surrounded by Rome and completely destroyed, including the temple. So everything between Matthew 23:36, where Jesus uses the word generation, and Matthew 24, verse 34, happened within that first century generation. Look with me at Matthew 24, verse 34. Matthew 24, verse 34 again says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." Jesus is saying to his generation that the temple is going to be torn down, false Christs are going to come, there's going to be earthquakes and rumors of war, and he's saying that in his generation, all these things are going to happen, and then the end will come. The end referencing the end of the old covenant, or Moses' age would completely be finished during that transitional generation. the generation that Jesus was speaking to and the generation that his disciples were part of. So it's very important when speaking about transitional generation, and especially the last days, that we understand that Jesus was referencing the last days coming to an end in the first century as the believing Jews moved out of the old covenant and into the new covenant. You have a great day today. Remember, check out my website at pureheartfellowship.com, and I'm all over social media, from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You have a great day. May the Lord bless you, and I look forward to being with you next time.